Hello and welcome to Jacko's Therapy. Now this is actually my very first video for pretty much reviewing video games as what I would like to do for my whole YouTube career, as you want to call. But this is a video game series that is very close to my heart since childhood and still now. So in this whole series, this is what I like to call a road to Sonic Superstars. And oh boy, that game excited the hell out of me. When after Sonic Mania, I was just like waiting for a couple of years for like the next game to be announced. And yet here we are, with 2.5D look, and I don't really give a shit if it's 16-bit or not. I'm just excited for a new classic 2D Sonic game. So the whole point in this series is to look through Sonic 1 to Sonic Mania. I might get a couple of distractions here and there I might want to look at, but all in due time. So in this whole series I'm going to look at Sonic 1, Sonic 2, Sonic CD, Sonic 3, Sonic 4, both of them, Knuckles Chaotix, and finally we end with Sonic Mania. So in my ideal world it shouldn't take me too long to even go through all these games since they're pretty short, unlike the 3D games now. Now, I'm not covering the 8-bit games since they're initially a Game Gear title, but it's not to say I'll ever get to them, but I will in due time, but probably like a couple of years or so. But I still have to get through the 3D ones. Now, the reason I'm including Knuckles Chaotix in this is because, well, it's mechanically exactly like the classic games and it's on a home console, and a system I don't really own. Well, maybe it's about time we get it started and look at the one that started it all, which is Sonic the Hedgehog for the SEGA MegaDrive.
And so it was, late in the 20th century, that a pox fell upon the land, a plague of home videos that were limited in intelligence. And so it was, he brought forth Genesis.
The SEGA MegaDrive, or the Genesis if you're living in North America. Released in 1998 in Japan, 1989 in America, and 1990 in Europe. A home console with 16-bit graphics and blast processing that no other consoles is capable of doing. But the problem is, everyone at home has owned a Nintendo Entertainment System that had a lot more games worth playing, like Mega Man and all that, and even have Zelda, Metroid, even the Italian plumber, Mario. And also Sega relied on porting the arcade games into the Sega MegaDrive, which shows the console's capabilities, but that's really not enough to grab the attention of the audience. With all those together, nobody can even come close to competing with Nintendo. So with Mario being popular in the video game world, while Sega need to create a mascot that can appeal to the wide audience, make people buy Sega than Nintendo, and so that people can grasp their product. So their answer is Alex Kidd. Well, the first game was released in 1986 for the Sega Master System, and it was well received from what I've researched. So the sequel was released for the Mega Drive in 1989, and it was not well received critically and sales compared to Super Mario Bros. 3 that came out a year later. So Sega hired the programmer Yuji Naka to create the game, and Naoto Oshima to design a character for the game. Also joining them too is Hirokazu Yasuhara to work on the level design. So the game's fast-paced platforming style contains slopes, loops and bumpers, so that players can build up momentum with thrills and excitement. So they need a character to go with it. So the human nature of Alex Kidd didn't work, so they decided to go with an animal character to have that Mickey Mouse vibes. So they went from a rabbit, then an armadillo, and so the final decision is a hedgehog. With cool sets of spines, the colour blue to match the logo, shoes that are inspired by Michael Jackson's boots from the Bad album, the colour red and white stripes from Santa Claus, and the attitude of Bill Clinton. Not that part that you're thinking of, so get it out of your head. So the name at first was Mr. Needlemouse, so then later on they changed the name to Sonic the Hedgehog. So having a character that's all about speed, so it makes much sense. So Sonic's original story is him starring in a rock band and has a human girlfriend named Madonna. So they're going for the Who Framed Roger Rabbit vibe. But the idea was scrapped, so the final result came to be, in the world known as South Island, the evil Dr. Ivor Robotnik has invaded the island and stole the animals for his creations known as badniks. So the evil Doctor can steal the 6 mystical gems called Chaos Emeralds for world domination. So our favourite blue blood Sonic won't put up with that, so he races through 6 zones and collect the gems to stop that from happening. So this isn't a simple princess kidnapped by a bad guy to save the day, it's more save the nature kind of feel, so nothing too complicated. And so the game was released in that summer of 1991. Well, I'm not exactly sure my origins with Sonic, but I think I remember back then I saw my dad and even my brother was playing Sonic 2, and I'm not sure exactly what grabbed my attention, either the character looks cool or his fast-speed gameplay. But after that, it was all history. So as Sonic, you race through 3 acts in a zone, running through collecting rings, killing badniks with a spin jump or rolling into them while holding down on the D-pad while running, and have a fight against Dr. Robotnik in every 3rd act in a zone with his own creation to try and stop Sonic. Sonic the Hedgehog is a video game that is very easy to pick up and play. So this game is all about high-speed platforming with slopes and loops to gain speed, so you can get multiple pathways to complete the stage, which feels very rewarding, especially when you're going to the extra shortcuts and hidden item boxes you couldn't reach that contains ring monitors, that gives you 10 rings, an extra life, a shield, speed shoes that makes you run faster than you already are, and invincibilities which you can run through like a madman blasting through everything in your path. Scattered around every level except for the final zone contains rings, which are your health for the entire series. When you get hit, the rings will scatter around you, where you can pick it up as much as 20 to retain. If you get hit with no rings, you lose a life, and collecting 100 of these will grant you an extra life. Also in this game are special stages, which you can get by beating every first 2 acts in the zone with 50 rings and jump into the giant ring, or Sonic can run past the stage and it ends because you take too long to get into the ring. In the special stages, you guide Sonic through this trippy rotating maze and reach the end to collect one of the 6 Chaos Emeralds in order to get a good ending. My opinion on the special stages are okay, but it can be finicky when you bounce off walls or bumpers that can guide you to the gold spheres which exit you out to the stage, and that means you fail, and that can get annoying. Especially that there are 6 emeralds in this game, you only have 10 chances to grab all the emeralds in this game. It doesn't sound that hard by collecting 50 rings all the way to the end of the stage and jumping into the giant ring. For Green Hill Zone it's no problem since it's pretty straightforward and easy since it's the first zone. But after that, that's where the game's challenge starts to kick in and where you have to play a more cautious approach with some awkward enemies and stage hazards are placed. Which brings up my major problem with this game. While the game's main focus is high-speed platforming, but the level design just seems a bit inconsistent. The first zone is Green Hill Zone, where you can blaze through levels no problem. Then the next zone, Marble Zone, where speed went down a couple of notches, where you're doing basic platforming, where you're riding blocks above lava, spikes on walls, and fireballs coming out of the walls. Next zone, Spring Yard Zone, which is a strange mix between the first two, with some nice high-speed sections while going down slopes, while other times you're riding slow blocks in a vertical path while avoiding enemy projectiles. The next zone, Labyrinth Zone, where you spend 95% of your time underwater, where it's slow, very high pressure when you're hunting with air pockets and air bubbles underwater before you drown, and this boss can kiss my ass. Starlight Zone, which is considered to be the best zone in the game, where it captures the game's identity with great music track. Now Scrap Brain Zone is one of the hardest zones in the whole franchise, where there's flamethrowers, bottomless pits, buzzsaws, and to top it all off, the third act is pretty much Labyrinth Zone Act 4, unless you know the shortcut that can end the stage very quickly. The final zone, which is only the final boss of the game, where you have no rings, high pressure sure, but as long as you know the pattern of the fight, you should be okay. Overall, while the game has pacing issues in a few levels, but there's nothing to say where at any point in the levels where it's unfair, so the challenge in this game is just fine. Going through levels at a high speed is the thrilling experience and rewarding, as I mentioned earlier. Where it really shines is where you're going down slopes and you roll down into a bowl while holding down on the D-pad so you can gather momentum is the best part about this game. Hell, even in the entire series, and it doesn't take the control away from the player while doing so. Another minor complaint I want to bring up is the obnoxious spike glitch. Once you hit a set of spikes, you lose a set of rings, and then you follow up with another set of spikes and you lose a life, giving you no invincibility frames to save yourself. Though it was fixed in other versions of this game fixes that problem. Not a huge problem, but it's just something that drives me nuts sometimes. In terms of bosses, most of them are pretty easy since the Doctor's left himself wide open for an attack, except Labyrinth Zone, which is one of the worst bosses in the whole series in my opinion. It's where you pretty much have to survive in this vertical room racing against floating water below you, and if you fuck up you go nearly all the way down and you have to be nearly pixel perfect to get out of this. I hated this. Graphically, I think this game looks great for an early MegaDrive title. Everything is bright and colourful and making the levels stick out, even the sprite animation. The levels themselves are pretty nice to look at. I mentioned the music track on Starlight Zone earlier, let's talk about the whole game soundtrack. The soundtrack composed by Masato Nakamura, which is part of the J-pop band Dreams Come True, which interestingly he only composed 2 video games in his career, this game and the sequel, which I'll talk about in the next video. For this game, it's fine. Not my favourite soundtrack in the whole series, but there are a few tracks I like. As I mentioned, Starlight Zone is just joy to the ears, Green Hill Zone is a classic, Spring On Zone is catchy as well. The rest, they're fine. So, overall, the game is fun to play, but I wouldn't even consider it to be your first Sonic game to play, since later games done better. But I can't deny how much of a legacy this game's left behind. The game is a huge success, absolutely killing it in the video game market in terms of sales, yet outselling Mario, and better yet, even bundling the game with the SEGA MegaDrive to boost sales even further. Nowadays there are so many ports of this game on mobile devices and every console you can think of. If I was going to go back to this game, I would be playing this on the mobile port by Taxman, or in the recent Sonic Origins where not only was widescreen support, but you can also play as Tails, Knuckles, and recently Amy, where you can play levels with their own abilities, which you can also beat the levels in more interesting ways. It even has elemental shields from Sonic 3, and you can even collect an extra Chaos Emeralds to collect, so you can unlock Super Sonic. Feel the power, you fat... Oh. So with the game's success, financially, so logically a sequel had to be made. So, with that said, I will see you guys next time when we look at the game that first exposed to me, and it has a special place in my heart and one of my favourite games of all time, and I'm pretty sure a lot of Sonic fans out there will have to agree. I'll see you next time with Sonic the Hedgehog 2 for the SEGA MegaDrive. And so, thank you for attending my therapy, and I'll see you next time.